Hello everyone, my name is Robin. I am in Group 3, Environmental Concerns. This is Module 9. I wanted to start my presentation with a video that I think is really pertinent to my topic. So if you just take a couple of minutes to watch, I think it's very interesting.
The idea that we need to protect this planet itself is a convoluted idea because it is not because of us that the planet is there, it is because of the planet we are there. Even to think me and the planet is a completely wrong notion because what you call as myself, the physical presence of who you are is just an outcrop of this planet. Whatever you experience as a part of yourself, with that, nobody has to tell you, please take care of this. Anyway, you will take care of it. The planet is for all of us and we cannot exist here by ourselves. Our existence here is not because of our economic activity. Right now, we are made to believe it is because of the percentages of growth that's happening in this country, you will live well. No, we will live well here if everything is green, beautiful, water is flowing, air is pure, we will live well here. This idea has to go into every human being's mind, into every citizen's mind, into every child's mind. You must always be conscious of the life other than human life. Most people are not even conscious of the human beings, so I'm reminding you, you must be conscious of everything that is alive. A tree, a plant, a blade of grass, a grasshopper hopping, you must be alive to everything. Constantly the air around us is entering us and coming out of us, and this is the basis of our life. What you exhale, the trees are inhaling. What the trees exhale, you are inhaling. There's a constant transaction going on. If we stop this process of breath for 1 minute, we understand that without transacting with the air around us, we cannot live for a moment. Similarly, on the level of water and on the level of earth, this transaction is going on. So how we keep the atmospheres around us, the water bodies around us, will determine the nature and the quality of our life.
Okay, so my topic is the environment, and the issue I decided to look into that is under discussion today is I want to look at how globalization, through the imposition of Eurocentric ideas, including developmentalism, capitalism, how that can influence trade and consumption practices which negatively impact the environment and contribute to climate change. So just to begin, there is overwhelming consensus by scientists that human-induced climate change is occurring. The trend is likely to continue if we persist in current practices. The greenhouse effect is a natural process that is actually the Earth utilizes to trap heat, and the atmosphere of the Earth, it all works together to trap heat on the planet so that we have a nice environment in which to live. Unfortunately, what happens with climate change is that the heating cycle, we go through these heating and cooling cycles naturally, but the heating cycle is sped up with all of this human activity, such as clearing forests, getting rid of trees, changes the water cycle, the usage of fossil fuels, animal agriculture, and other human consumption practices that have led to an increase in heat-producing gases, including carbon dioxide and methane, and then to a lesser extent nitrous oxide and halocarbons. And there's really no debate on this. Scientific consensus, about 98%. So if we look at it, if we define this, what I'm looking at here right now, as far as trade and, the developmentalism, which is the idea that we develop other countries into sort of a version of ourselves so that they're not developed enough. And I think we talked about that in class at a different time. What does developed mean? I mean, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? So, but wealthy countries have a stake in the expansion of markets through international trade. They may profit from pushing developmentalism on less developed nations, LDNs. And as consumerism, spurred by the Western idea of success, spreads through other countries, there's a negative impact on their natural resources in many cases. Organizations are pretty much concerned with the bottom line. They are really not considering, on average, planetary resources, natural resources. They have sort of this expansionist mentality. And I've heard of globalization a lot over the course of my education, and I guess I always looked at it in a very positive way, but it really isn't always positive, because this idea of taking capitalism to all cultures around the world and sort of whitewashing everyone, making everyone the same, a lot of people may lose their culture, and in many cases, as we'll talk about here, some of their natural resources. So the local and global influence, globally it's profit-driven, capitalist idea. They push consumerism, not concerned with either ecological or social consequences. Basically, the goal of the wealthy, country or organization is to align less developed countries or less developed nations with Western ideology in order to advance their capitalistic economic ideas. And this, again, may have negative consequences on the natural balance of their existing ecosystems. And this developmentalist notion implies that a nation is defined and legitimized based mainly on economic status. So nothing else matters except the economy in this case. As long as they grow and build a great economy, so what if they deplete their natural resources? This might drive native populations, this idea of this economic growth, to not using their natural resources in a way that they should. Proponents of the developmentalist idea cite that it can assist LDNs with achieving economic stability and encourage equitable trade that may have a global benefit. Criticism is that developmentalism discourages ideological and cultural autonomy and bases success on uniformity to a general Eurocentric way of thinking. So, some of the strategic methods employed by countries with a developmentalist approach may impose things like a controlled market, have severe restrictions on less developed nations, and this may decrease the free market flow. They use constrictive practices. Richer countries such as the United States may even take advantage of disasters to execute their developmentalist ideas on native cultures, and may ignore the environmental implications related to imposing this ideology. On a local scale, participating countries may be encouraged to export goods, oftentimes to the detriment of their own populace and the environment. And as consumer demand grows, countries with demand natural resources may see an opportunity to, in demand. If they have natural resources that are in demand, they may see an opportunity to increase their economic standing. If they buy into this idea of export as a method to obtain economic stability, and sometimes it is, they may rely on unethical or unsustainable practices, such as destruction of natural resources, cheap human and animal labor, unsanitary or unsafe working conditions, unethical practices involving animals intended for export. I mean, we've heard of child slavery and things like that in less developed nations. Cheaper labor may benefit multinational corporations, but rarely the people who work for these industries. So is free trade really free? The free trade market is mainly supported by two organizations, and another group talked about this, including the World Trade Organization and the International Money Fund. The World Trade Organization was founded in Geneva, Switzerland in 1995, and it attempts to negotiate agreements between countries that ensure free and equitable trade. And the IMF was developed in 1944 after the economic collapse of the Great Depression, an attempt to ensure a more stable monetary system, sort of a consistent exchange rate. And they loan money to lesser developed nations. They loan money to, countries in general. And criticisms of these two organizations include the claim that they may be biased towards less developed nations and may promote environmental destruction through their focus on economic growth with no regard or little regard for the environmental consequences. So currently, the WTO and IMF are made up respectively of 164 and 148 member countries worldwide. And they join basically for the economic benefits membership status gives them. So why is this happening? Well, increased consumerism may be driven by capitalist and developmentalist ideology. It's contributing to a larger ecological footprint, but it's, the capitalist idea that's being sold a lot of times through media and things like that. Resource-intensive industries such as animal agriculture are responsible for 20% or more of greenhouse gas emissions that are contributing to negative impact of climate change, and an increased demand for products from the animal agriculture industry in countries that are developing very rapidly, such as China and India and places like that. That is contributing to even more gas emissions. This includes indirect activities related to animal agriculture, like the clearing of the rainforest to accommodate farm animals, increased production of crops utilized for animal feed, fuel burned to transport animals, and water utilized to grow plants for animal feed. Consumption of finite natural resources such as oil and gas are increasing as countries become more modernized and industrialized, and competitive industrialized countries are worried about how complying with carbon reduction policies may impact world standing. So basically, they just, they're worried about the bottom line, and so they don't want to take the risk by putting in measures that will be helpful to the environment. So as far as cause and effect goes, there's a large body of evidence to support climate change and its impact to life on the planet. NASA cited many different observable evidence of climate change, including shrinking ice sheets, glacial retreat, sea level rise, decreased snow cover, ocean acidification, declining Arctic sea ice, global temperature rise. And then the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change reported that evidence for climate warming is unequivocal. That's what they said. And the United Nations Environment and World Trade Organization report said that trade rose 32% between 1950 and 2008. But they suggested that it may have a positive impact within a country as it increased their economic status. It also gave them the ability economically, financially, to afford methods to sort of negate the negative consequences that depleting natural resources had on the environment. Of course, the WTO may have an agenda here as well. So I thought this was kind of a cute comic here. What if it's a big hoax and we create a better world for nothing? And then you see behind him all of these different things for nothing, right? Energy independence, preserve rainforest, sustainability, green jobs. All of these things. So it's never for nothing. But there are skeptics of climate change. They've called it a hoax. Some believe those scientists are in it who support the idea of climate change are industry paid to promote a specific agenda. A 2009 U.S. Senate Environment and Public Works Committee report indicated that over 700 scientists expressed skepticism over the role of GHG emissions on climate change. The one representative of the party representative had received almost $1 million from the oil industry. So again, an agenda. Something like like I said previously, 98% of scientists, maybe more at this point, support there's a consensus that climate change is occurring. So there's a hegemonic ideology of more developed nations tend to dominate the, when these more developed nations tend to dominate the world stage in terms of trade, consumption, and their ecological footprint. I'm just going to move this over a little bit. The developmentalist and superiority-based mentality of, many developed countries may be utilized to negate the significance of natural resources in lesser developed countries or nations. So many countries have relied on the World Bank as a method to garner economic success and attempt to become players on the world stage. Some countries may grow foods to export while native people die of starvation. So, there are social justice issues that are very problematic here when lesser developed countries think that they're going to attain an economic level of standing in the world, and in order to do that, they have to grow and sell their food to more developed countries while their own people starve. They may also use unethical methods such as child or slave labor to produce goods for more wealthy nations. And we've had stories in the news about that kind of thing many times. So lesser developed nations are often indebted to the IMF, which can destabilize them and their economy and contribute to local poverty and issues such as lack of basic necessities. And these impoverished areas may cause irreparable harm to natural resources by overfarming, fishing, deforestation, and resource depletion as well. So the implications of this, in terms of environmental destruction, the implications are devastating harm to the environment, and countries are encouraged to adopt a capitalist-based consumer mentality. And conversely, though, increased consumption by wealthy countries, again, I just stated this in the last slide, may increase the ability of some of these countries to have more access to resources themselves that can counteract some of the damage that's done to their own, and maybe they can even buy things from import products from outside the country. Go back a little bit. As the population grows and more countries adopt the capitalist-based consumerism mentality, there will likely be a drain on natural resources. This may lead to increased species extinction, resource depletion, GHG emissions, that impact climate change. This is evidenced by the growth of China and the increase in their consumption of farm animals. Methane from Chinese farms is expected to increase 36% by 2030. On a positive note, as countries develop more technologies, again, this may increase their ability to contribute to the solutions that will have a positive change. But the thing that I think about is that we wouldn't need the solutions if we didn't have the problem in the first place. So I would think that we'd want to get to the root of the problem. So as far as, I just spoke about China, do positive implications for some groups and countries promote negative implications for others, ensure organizations that may profit from, some of the globalization efforts and the trade. They, for instance, China is also, as they grow and become more industrialized, they have an increased need for resources, and that is going to have a negative impact on the environment. So the possible solutions, the United Nations, World Health Organization, Commission on Sustainable Development, and other relevant organizations should play a role in providing information to governments and their people on the potentially negative impact of unsustainable practices that may contribute to economic growth in the short term, but in the long term cause planetary destruction. And as the population expands, the way people eat may need to change, as utilizing animals as a source of food is unsustainable. What method of education would be most effective for educating consumers on the direct impact of their consumption of animal products on the health of the environment? This is one of the questions I had, and what is the most efficient method for globalized information delivery on that topic? So questions that might be considered are: what steps can individuals, groups, organizations, government officials, and other entities take to move towards a more sustainable pattern of consumption? How can more developed countries play a part in maintaining a balance between acquiring resources but still maintain the integrity of the existing ecosystems of nations from whom they procure resources? And how can wealthier countries help less developed nations who want to increase economic status retain a level of autonomy? What role can technology play in contributing to environmental destruction, and what role does it play in reversing the negative consequences of climate change? Because I'm sure it can do both. So consider this: there's not a one-size-fits-all approach to any situation, and that includes issues related to trade, economic stability, or climate change. So I wanted to show you some of the seminal authors on this topic. Oh, that actually took me to, I didn't want to go to this page. So let's see if I can go back. Okay, well, I don't think I can go back on this at this point. So what I will do, let me see here, hold on, I can go over here. Oh wait, okay, look here. I've got, well, this is a new program, so I'm just going to move on. If you would like the information about the seminal authors, I will provide that for you. Just contact me or put it into the discussion board when I post. Thanks very much for listening.